So New Orleans is proud to host the 80th NCAI convention, but curious, what are the main focus areas of the convention this year?
So this year's convention is, a historical event. It's our 80th anniversary. And so, which means, in 1944, NCAI was founded with a small group of individuals and tribes out in Denver. They had their first Congress, and from that time, it's grown. Um, NCAI is a governmental membership group that brings in tribes from around the country to meet throughout the year and specifically annually to talk issues. Each region has its caucuses, and trying to think of what else. And they are kind of our fiercest advocate for Indian country. Making sure that our voices are heard. In the federal government, and trying to make change within our treaties and other different things that are happening around the country.
So you mentioned that it was founded in 1944. Why exactly was there a need for an organization like this to be created?
Mm-mm. You're asking me a tough question.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Okay. How about this? Do you feel it's making an impact, and what work still needs to happen?
Oh, I believe it absolutely does make an impact. Oftentimes within our tribal communities, we are seen as individual sovereign nations. And so we all have our own unique individual needs, issues, concerns that we have to deal with, individually. And being able to have an organization like NCAI be our larger voice where, our tribal leadership can go to them and say, hey, this is what's happening in our community. Is this happening elsewhere? One, and making those connections with other tribes facing the same issue. And then, from there, being able to have them, make our sovereignty the priority at the federal level, and meeting with, presidents, senators, lobbyists, all of that to ensure, our tribal sovereignty is protected at an individual level, at that individual tribal level, also at an individual level, as well as just across the board, as what we call Indian country.
How many of these conventions have you attended?
This is actually only my second annual one. Last year I went for the first time. My background is more specifically in housing. And so a lot of my work during the year is going to a lot of the housing conferences. And last year, we have some different things happening within housing right now with the reauthorization of NAHASA. And so I went on site to, not meet just the, individual leadership of NCAI, but to actually meet and talk with direct tribal leaders. They're not necessarily as actively involved in housing a lot as our housing authorities are and things like that. And so I wanted to ensure, that they have a voice and an understanding of what, our housing departments and our housing authorities face when it comes to our federal funding and leveraging resources and, what our needs are in that area. And so, through that, made a lot of good connections, good colleagues and stuff. And then we all got to vote at the end on where we wanted to see the next NCAI convention. And, as I mentioned, it's all about who you know. And so, knowing some of the leadership there at NCAI, I'm like, New Orleans, we haven't had one here. And really, it's been since I think 2015, 2016, since we've had an Indian country conference here at all. And so, for me, knowing it was the 80th anniversary, it's an election year. Just knowing, we have a strong voice of Indian country here in Louisiana. We have, active state recognized tribes. We have our 4 federally recognized tribes. I'm a New Orleans girl at heart. So anything that's close to home is great to me. And, being able to, see the convention center, turn into, Indian country with all of our vendors and the like, and knowing our food and, a lot of our buildings and architecture around here, and just a lot of even the things we do, have such a native influence from, traditions, over over centuries. I thought this would be a great, historical place for NCAI.
I agree. Oh, so tell me one of the things you were most looking forward to at this convention.
For me, it was actually, now I'm going to nerd out because it is kind of cheesy. For me, it was actually, as I mentioned, I do a lot of housing work. And so earlier in the week, we had our Indian Community Development Block Grant consultation. That's a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant program, that hasn't been revised in quite a few years. And so we had all of the HUD, Office of Native Programs, from DC here in town, meeting, with tribal housing leaders and tribal leaders to discuss changes to that program to help benefit our tribes better. I'm seen as one of the subject matter experts of the ICDBG program. I write a lot of those grants. I work with the tribes to kind of see the bigger picture and develop their housing projects. And so for me, it was being able to sit there with, the ONAP team in person, from DC, and, voice my opinion related to that program. There's only a few of us that work with tribes across the country within Indian housing. A lot of other housing consultants are regional within their areas, and so being able to provide that voice for those tribes that don't usually come to the conferences when it comes to housing and things like that, and be able to give some input to hopefully make some statutory and regulatory change to that program.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have.